Hello and welcome to Symbols and Secrets, the podcast dedicated to mind, mystery, and magic with a focus on helping initiates in the mystery arts create more powerful experiences for their audiences, and maybe even make a living at it. The show's host is a 20-plus year veteran of the entertainment industry who has traveled the world, performed in Vegas, across the world, and has worked for household names and companies. Here he is, Jonathan Pritchard.
Thank you so much, Malcolm, for that very natural and not at all robotic introduction. Hello and welcome, everybody. I am Jonathan Pritchard. This is Symbols and Secrets, and this episode is a special treat. Our guest is Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert. He's also well known for a lot of other stuff, and we dig into a bunch of what that's all about. We cover a lot of ground, and I even made notes so that I would make sure I didn't skip anything. We start with his beginning with magic tricks. We also talk about how he figures out which punchline to use when he's creating a comic, and his answer will help you also figure out where to take your show if you're listening between the lines of what he's saying. We also talk about the power of failing forward, drawing cartoons for cartoonists versus drawing for an audience, and what that can teach you about your work, not feeling professional, and the imposter syndrome in the face of a world-class expert, the power of programming yourself to overcome impossible challenges, the power of compliments, and a lot more. Now, what's interesting is that this conversation is about 2 years old. I had a different podcast at the time, and it turns out that this conversation fits better with Symbols and Secrets because of the heavy overlap of magic, the malleability of reality, hypnotism, and the work that Scott's been doing. So no matter what your initial thoughts and feelings are, I strongly urge you to listen to the end, and you will learn a thing or two or 15 from it. So we're going to dive right into the start of our conversation with Scott Adams.
You know, when I was a kid, I was really into magic, as a lot of kids are. I had my own magic sets, and we would try to practice all the tricks and everything. And I'm pretty sure that that was the base for my later understanding that reality is subjective. Because I remember there was another kid who had gone to magic camp. They came back with all these tricks that were like world-class tricks, not the ones that I could do as a little kid.
Right.
And he did a trick in front of me. I forget what it was. Somehow he magically knew the card or whatever it was. And I remember thinking to myself, that looks so real that it is indistinguishable from reality, and whatever else I've been being fooled about in the world, I wouldn't know. So that was my first indication that there could be things that are completely artificial and you wouldn't know the difference. And then I thought, maybe I should keep an eye open.
The crack in reality opens.
Right, right. And that became a lifelong, journey. I think it was the Santa Claus problem that was first. You're a little kid, and the day you learn that Santa Claus isn't real, you're like, what else are they telling me that isn't real? Eventually, I was sent to a Christian Sunday school as a kid to learn the techniques and stuff.
Mm.
And at age 11, I called a meeting with my mother, and I said, I don't know how to break it to you. Remember, I'm 11 years old, and so I'm just trying to figure out the world. And I said, I don't know how to break it to you, but none of this is real. You know that, right? Do you know that? I don't know if you know that. Can you tell this isn't real?
Right.
Now, of course, that was my kid view. My mother, to her credit, listened to my argument and said, when I said I don't want to do this anymore or go to Sunday school because I don't believe it, she listened to it and said, okay, well, you thought it through. Never came up again. Never had the conversation again, not once.
That is fantastic.
All
You had an
she ever
amazing mom.
Yeah, in many ways, in a very sort of simple farmer's daughter way, she had these little pieces of wisdom about how to make things work.
Mhm.
And all she asked is that I had a reason. Did I think it through? Did I try it? Did I sample it long enough to really know? Yes, yes, yes. Done. Moving on.
That's really
So
cool.
so since then, I've developed a more nuanced, understanding of religion. Now I'm very pro-religion while not being personally a believer, because I just see it being a filter that works for people, and I'm not
Yeah.
gonna take away what works. My
Yeah.
my my reality is no more likely to be true than anybody else's. Like, I lost my belief in my privileged reality. We
Hmm.
shouldn't use privilege these days, but, you know, my I'm the one who figured it out and everybody else is wrong.
Right.
You
Yep.
it takes a long time to learn that that's not the case.
Right. Right. Because the people who are the easiest to fool are the people who think they can't be fooled, and that's kind of the life's work of my mentor, James Randi. He was a consultant to scientists who didn't want his consultation. He was like, "Okay, you guys who are saying that there's scientific proof for this stuff are being lied to and taken advantage of. Who are you to question my education and experience as a scientist? You mere magician are
Yeah.
incapable of like just like, okay, guy, sure, sure.
I I I I was thinking of exactly that. Maybe that part of your mentalist trick, because I was looking at the amazing Randy over your shoulder there in the wall.
Yeah.
And indeed, that insight, because I remember reading that just years and years ago, where the amazing Randy said that the more expert you were, the easier you were to fool. Now, the first time you hear that, you go, really? Or is it really just some anecdotes that you're generalizing to the world? And, years and years of observation, and I don't see I don't know if I would go all the way to easier to fool, but I would definitely go all the way to equally easy to fool.
Hmm.
No difference.
Yeah, for sure. There's a thing I wanted to run by you because I think you'll appreciate it in a way that I've been searching for somebody to appreciate it, which is the explanation for every single magic trick you've ever seen in your life and will ever see in your life. And it's a really cool framework, which is the magician or agent of action creates a context for the audience to make logical assumptions that are later shown to not be true.
Yeah, I would say that is the setup of pretty much all magic. You have to be brought into the framework in order to be fooled, because it's the framework that creates the pattern, and it's the pattern that fools you. Yeah. I
Right.
mean, that plus a few things like misdirection, but basically that's it. Yeah.
Right. Because it that was the thing I appreciated in Loser Think when you're talking about the importance of context. And you were speaking mainly to news cycles and mass media and the frame of the television and that kind of thing. And it really is everything that you're doing, saying, where you're saying it, when you're doing it, how people are seeing it, what direction they're seeing it from. Everything is the context that you understand the experience through. And that kind of leads into one of my favorite mentalism techniques and principles, which is dual reality. It's a really unknown beyond the very kind of elite mentalist world, but it is incredibly powerful, which it's basically that you bring a spectator up on stage as the volunteer to help with this experiment slash demonstration slash trick.
Right.
And everything that I'm doing and saying is creating an experience for the volunteer that is unbelievable. At exactly the same time, the audience is experiencing a completely different trick.
Right.
It's really wacky and most folks it doesn't square with them. They're like that makes no sense. So for example, one of my favorite things about that is I bring somebody up and have them relax and I say, "Look, I'm not hypnotizing you. You are not being hypnotized. You're in full control of your faculties. I promise you, you're not being hypnotized." Lead them through just a little visualization where they walk down some stairs and crawl into this small room with books around. And I say, "Everything you've ever known and everything you could know is in this room. want you to just take a moment to in your mind's eye, look around, and now open your eyes. Now, I've got flashcards of all sorts of different words in all sorts of different languages. And then I ask them, what is this? And they're like, it says breathe. Cool, cool. Next word, totally different language. What's this? Relax. You're nailing this. So they're reading languages that they don't speak, like at all. And it's just as plain as day to them. They're just like, yeah, that's
but not accurately, I assume.
they are, right? That's super weird, which is the person on stage is only describing exactly what they see, which is the best way I can explain it without giving it away to the listeners out in
Okay.
the world. They're straight up just reading English to them. To the audience is seeing them read foreign language words. So the person
Okay, I
on
got it.
stage is just having a very straightforward conversation.
Just
And
reading words, yeah.
right. And what's so weird about this? Everybody in the audience is going, "What is happening?" Right? So we go through all the flashcards, and then I say, "You know what? I can't have you walking around with superhuman powers that you didn't earn. I just gave you a gift that's too strong for you to wield. So imagine you're walking back up the stairs. Let me know when you're at the top." And then they go, okay, yeah." And then we go back through them, and then I'm like, "What's this?" And they're like, Houchin? Okay, cool, cool, cool. Go back. What's this one? They're like, a pecto? I don't know. Okay, cool. And the audience is just sitting there going, what? Jonathan is a demon man. Like, what is going on? So the person on stage has no clue why the audience is freaking out. So there are four realities going on at
Oh,
exactly
yeah.
the same time. There's the volunteers' reality, there's the audience's reality, that's N 999. There's my reality of knowing what's causing both of those other two. Then there's the physicist's reality of this is all just atoms bouncing around, right? The actual like base layer devoid of all meaning, but this is what is kind of reality. So there's four realities going on at exactly the same time with exactly
Well,
the same things happening.
unless I'm in the room, and then there's 5 because the simulation kinda gets rid of that physicist problem there.
Yep, yep, exactly, exactly. So that was I was just kind of shouting by myself in a room alone when you're talking about the multiple realities
Yeah.
of, well, these facts are here and there are multiple narratives that fit which one's real. Right?
So I had, teased my audience. I don't know how many of them will go over to watch this. I'll make sure that they see it. But, I teased them that the biggest red pill in the world was coming, and that sometime in the it would sort of reveal itself over the coming months. And I can tell them directly what it is, but they can't hear it because 'cause they're not quite ready, and I told them they're not ready. And so I'll do it again. I'll tell them directly, for those who watch this, what's coming. Those who aren't ready just won't hear it. What's coming is that you're gonna learn that your opinions were assigned to you. You're gonna learn that you did not come up with any of your own opinions on the politics and stuff. The
Mhm.
little stuff, of course, you do. But until you understand that the powers of influence, have reached, such a level of technology and capability that they can just assign you an opinion, and you will believe it came from your own thoughts. That is the biggest red pill in the world. Now, 9 out of 10 people who just heard this just said, "I don't think so."
Impossible. No way. I know what I know.
No, I see what you're saying in a little way, that we're a little persuaded, but I think that's mostly the other side. Because I do so actually, now that you mention it, Scott, that's a good point. I do notice that the people on the other side of the politics for me are actually hypnotized. Wow, I hadn't thought about how those people are hypnotized before, but, that is basically nowhere on the level of awareness. You've gotta understand it's everybody.
Yeah, it really is. And in the context that I appreciate that in is the importance of your language and managing the information available to the audience and not stating the obvious, just helping them understand what is obvious to them. Well, that's exactly the result of a very carefully crafted experience that naturally leads them to the conclusion that you want. And the super easy to appreciate example is having a deck of cards or tarot cards, whatever. And if your script says, I have here a perfectly normal deck of cards, that instantly people go, wait a minute, that's a really weird thing to say. What is a normal deck of, wait, is there such a thing as a not normal deck of cards? Wait a minute. So I guess what a normal, like a not normal deck of cards would be one that just does some tricky stuff. Wait, are there tricky cards? Okay. So by stating the obvious, you've just created the diametrically opposed counter belief to balance out what you're trying to assert and thereby creating the thing you're trying to avoid. Whereas if you just treat it and behave as though the cards are normal, whether or not they are, you're giving the audience just the information that they need to tell themselves, that's normal, without even being aware that, that's normal, was a thought that they had. Because it never reaches conscious awareness. It's an assumption that they make that is part of our predicting nature of mind, trying to make sense of reality. That's what happens before you're even consciously aware of it. So now,
Yeah.
yeah, who are you going to believe? Well, I know what I know. You can't tell me otherwise. So now, after a show, I can explain exactly how something works to somebody, and they'll say, it can't be that. I know that that's what you're trying to say, but I know what I saw. And there's no way that what you just told me from a lifetime's worth of experience is exactly how it works. Can't be how it works. It has to be the thing I know is real. It's like, oh, no. What are you doing?
Well, that's also the bigger picture that nobody trusts anybody anymore. Like you could tell them your trick, and they're like, I don't think so.
Right,
I'm not so
right.
sure. But you remind me of the hypnotist trick that I talk about all the time because it just comes up all the time, which is you don't want to give people more information than what you want that is productive and on point. And your example was exactly that. As soon as you give them something that could be a problem, reminds them of their childhood trauma, but you couldn't possibly know that. So you wanna trim all of your communication to the smallest thing with no extras, because it's all the extras that get you in trouble.
Right. And that's why I always say what I do is just information management. The right information at the right time, the right way to the right person. That's all it is. The wrong information at the wrong time, wrong information. Right information at the wrong time. Right, right. So it all has to be perfectly aligned. And a way that I try to help people approach it is with an art metaphor. Saying, imagine you wanted to paint something that was so real looking that they would believe that this dragon exists. Dragons don't exist, but you want to paint it so well that people think it's real. What do you have to do? Okay, well, one, you have to understand reality and how it works and how light works and how perspective works. The only way you're going to get there is to understand reality. And okay, so now you know why there's so many life study paintings. You have to be perfect at representing truth and reality before you can create a realistic lie that people will take as truth. So
Right.
to be a perfect communicator means you could tell a lie that's indistinguishable from the truth. And the only way to get there is to become a perfect communicator of accuracy, which is why learning how to do a magic trick or be a hypnotist is the world's best training at being a communicator.
Oh, I agree, and, earlier I was gonna say that, I think a lot of people who end up on our path of really understanding how the mind works, etcetera, I think a lot of them had magic experience as a kid that just opened up that doorway and says, "Ooh, what else is beyond this door?
Yeah.
If people can be fooled this easily, is this not a superpower?" Because
Right.
that's how I thought of it when I saw how easily I could dupe people. I thought, "Well, what else can this do?" And, I became a hypnotist as a young man, and I learned, wow, you can do a lot more than you think you can do.
Hmm.
Now, of course, the trick, and you're aware of this, but the audience maybe not. If you ask the audience, make a list of all the things you think hypnosis can do, then, make a list of things you're pretty sure it can't do, and now reverse them because that's reality. The things you're pretty sure it could never do, oh, it can do.
Are
The things
are
you
exactly what
think
it's best at.
yeah, the things you think you want it to do, like lose weight, quit smoking, well, it can be part of that process, but it's not gonna do it better than every other method, because
Hmm.
basically has more to do with what you're bringing to the process. If you bring the right attitude and motivation to the process, a lot of processes will work, but it's not really the hypnosis is the special one in that case. But yeah,
Yeah.
so people have a completely backwards idea of how all of this works.
I love that. That's perfect. And and I also wanted to dig into influence with you as a tool and as a thing, because you get lambasted just nonstop from people who aren't appreciating how you're appreciating skillful use of a thing. They're taking it as an endorsement of its consequences or its intention, not just its usefulness. So there's a map that I have in my head of influence and how people try to use it, that I've tried to use to help people understand that no, this influence thing is human communication. It is life, and you're using it. You just think that other people that are better than you are now bad. So in my head, it's a quadrant. And is it, am I trying to get them to change their belief or their behaviors? So there's the kind of vertical axis. And the horizontal axis is, am I trying to benefit just me at their well-being and expense of their well-being? And the other side would be, everybody is benefiting from this. Like, this is win-win-win for everybody. So the, am I trying to change their belief to my benefit is manipulation. If I'm trying to change their behavior and I don't care what they think or feel about me, that's coercion. Give me your wallet, right? I'm now
Okay.
manipulating, like I'm changing your beliefs or your actions to my benefit. Give me your wallet. So I'm coercing you. If you're trying to change their beliefs to the benefit of everybody, that is persuasion. To the benefit of everybody of changing their behavior, that's influence. I want you and me to go to this restaurant because I know that it's going to be the best thing for all of us. So I don't need you to believe that it's the best restaurant. I just need you to go there, right? So I'm going to try to influence the group to go do this thing. The things that are the most effective work at the belief level. So that's where persuasion and kind of manipulation, which is the withholding of information that people need to make a fully informed decision. That's the dark side of it.
Now, the one wrinkle that I see is that I've started over time to lose the distinction between what people believe and what they do because of the two-way nature of it.
Hmm.
Plenty
Yeah.
of instances you just make somebody do something or even write a sentence that they don't believe. It's in the book Influence,
Yep. Yep.
and come back in a year, and something like 30% of the people who did it have changed their opinion to the one they wrote that was the opposite of their opinion a year ago. So the
Hmm.
mechanics of just doing something makes you a believer,
Exactly.
which is why I don't vote. So if the mechanics of voting would cause you to lose whatever little bit of objective ability you had, because then you just become a teammate and you're done.
Precisely. Precisely. And it's that kind of again, you outline it in Loser Think too, about how we are messy pattern creating creatures that come up with these wacky decisions and then retroactively assign a logical narrative that fits the details and take that as the motivation for the decision rather than the post justification for it.
Right.
So if you behave in ways, it will definitely directly affect your belief for sure. So it is kind of another angle was something that I appreciated about how you framed the chapters in Loser Think is thinking like an artist, thinking like an engineer. I wrote a book called Think Like a Mind Reader, but it's blank like a mind reader. That's going to be my chicken soup for the soul, just $1 million cash cow, right? So blank like
Yeah.
a mind reader. And I was like, oh yeah, this is perfect. Right. And part of it is understanding the beliefs drive the experiences and the world you understand, which filters out everything that doesn't align with that to reinforce the pre-existing belief set that further reinforces your behaviors to create those outcomes that further reinforce your belief set. But then I've been doing martial arts for a decade, and I've seen that I don't care if you understand what it is that you're doing. You don't need to know how to apply these techniques. Do these motor movements to ingrain these patterns into your neuromuscular system.
Uh,
It totally bypasses your conscious mind. I don't need you to understand it. Just do it. And suddenly you know Kung Fu. So
right.
it's both angles. It's both angles
Mhm.
that constantly feedback. Change one input, you're changing both outcomes.
Yeah, even our mental model that our brain is doing the thinking and the body is doing the working. Once you understand that your body and your brain are basically similar. For example, the best example I use is if I'm trying to write a comic and I'm trying to figure out a funny punchline. There's a process where I'm quickly cycling through the possibilities in my mind. Now that's just a mental process. It's like this, no, 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 no. And then I'll hit one that will be the winning one. And the way that I judge it is that I have a physical body response. Anything short of a physical response where I chuckle, I go, or add my own joke, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
The thing I don't like to admit, it's like, yeah, I laugh at my own jokes because I won't publish them until I do.
right.
So unless I have some response. So in that way, my brain is acting like the sensor for the thoughts, but I'm not sure I would call those a different it's all part of the same process. My body is just part of my brain. I'm just using it together.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's just it how do you live with seeing matrix code with agents everywhere, right? Like that's because I mean it can be exhausting and it just watching you be indefatigable. My mouth will work right.
Wait,
It,
indefatigable?
yes,
I
that one.
I don't it's one of those.
Yeah, the idea is being you keep showing up for punishment. Like every day you're doing the coffee hour and hanging out with people on Periscope and it's an incredible following and they're engaged, right? It's like I understand the reward part. What makes you just keep fighting the good fight every day knowing that there are a significant percentage of people out there in the world who are looking at the finger and missing what you're pointing at.
Well, some of it is just getting used to it. If you're a public creator or an artist, every day I have, just armies of trolls coming after me and always have since the beginning of my cartooning career. So some of it's just getting used to it. You can get used to anything. But I was thinking as you're talking at an earlier point, I was thinking that there's some kind of weird dividing line that separates people, from the ones who become seekers.
Mhm.
Like I would consider you a seeker, like, how does this work? How does reality work? And other people are just trying to live their lives. And the difference is if you find out that one of your most cherished, strongly held beliefs is clearly violated. In other words, you find out something that even you have to say, oh, wow, I've been wrong about that for 63 years. I'm totally wrong. I got to just change my opinion. When that happens, you have one of two thoughts. My thought is exhilaration. Exhilaration. I'm that wrong? My God, this is my happiest, coolest day. I can't believe how wrong I was. And now I have a new tool that I can be more right about things. And
Yeah.
I've got a new superpower. It was like better than watching a movie with a surprise ending. But do other people have that feeling? Or do they feel, oh, I'm an idiot? I don't want to be an idiot. Maybe I've been right all along. And maybe, it's just harder to accept being wrong. So I have a mental model where being wrong is just part of my process. Failing is required. It's not even optional.
Mm.
Failing is just required. You got to do 10 things to get one lucky thing. That's how luck works. I don't make the rules, right? I'm not the one who said you got to try 10 things and maybe one will work out.
Right.
It wasn't me. I wouldn't have written the rules that way, but those are the rules. So if you don't play them, you're not going to get a good result.
Just how it works. Yeah, sure. The embarrassment part of that equation really hit home with me. I had a really effective inoculation event for embarrassment where it was a huge opportunity. I worked the college market for about a decade, and colleges have an entertainment budget, and they book mind readers like me and entertainers and jugglers and comedians to come entertain their students. And all the people who book entertainment for the college will come together for this national conference where they're in the audience and some performers get selected to be a showcase act where you get 15 minutes to do your thing in front of 2,000 people, and every single one of them could book you for your job.
Right.
You do a good job, you're now booked for a year and a half. You don't have to worry about a thing. So no pressure, right? and and to fully tell how many ways I screwed up concurrently takes about 45 minutes to fully explain the nuances of just how badly I screwed up. But it was bad because I go out and suddenly I'm in the middle of this routine that playfully over exaggerates the browbeating nature of ham handed influence. Do you want the red deck of cards? Do you want the blue deck of cards? Blue. No, I mean, which deck of cards shaking the red deck? Which deck of cards do you want? So it's overtly, okay, yeah, I get it. So then we're in the middle of this pseudo influence routine, and then suddenly music comes out of nowhere, but it's this wall of sound, and everybody just, oh, God, jerks, right? So then I look back and it's the tech guys plugging in my laptop that I forgot to plug into the sound system. So the music was playing that I started, but didn't hear it and blamed the sound guy. I was like, stupid sound guy muted my channel like they always do. Rabble, rabble, rabble. No, he had it unmuted just like I asked him to. My music was still playing because some idiot, me, didn't plug it into the sound system after sound check, right? So it is 100% my fault. And then I look back and see that they're helping me, and that's what caused my problem. But then I go, hey, everybody, please, let's give it up for the sound guys who are working hard to make sure this all goes well. To the audience's perspective, the sound guy just screwed up. And now I'm being a jerk to him, like, let's give it up for the sound guys that are working hard over here. Right. So that was the first crack in the we love Jonathan facade. Right. So then this lady was distracted and then, okay, all right, we're getting back into the routine. Turn it over. And it's her card. I'm like, is that your card? And she's like, no. She doesn't believe. How in the world did that work? The audience is taking that as her saying, no, you messed it up. And then I'm saying, no, really, is that your card? Which again, given the context I created, looks like I'm browbeating her into just going along with it, right? I'm now meta aware of how poorly this is going. So I start sweating, just profuse, like the flop sweats. And then
Yeah,
she's getting visibly repulsed at how gross this man is, right? So bring it to a successful conclusion, not even hard like so then I bring up 3 people for I can now read their minds. This person's thinking of a number, this person's thinking of a word, and this person draws a picture, and I can tell you everything, except I get 2 of them dead wrong. Just super wrong. Not even close to massaging it into being, "Oh," right? The 3rd one is pretty wrong too, and then I say, and remember, I'm sweating through, you can see my shirt's all sweating through it's super gross. And then I say, "Close enough for government work." What I didn't know was that the USO bookers were in the room who book all the military tours. And given that they just watched oh, yeah, and another thing was that the timer stopped at 3 seconds in. If you go over 3 seconds of your 15 minutes, they turn off the lights, your mic, and it's super embarrassing. So I have that in the back of my head. I can't go over time. I can't go over time. Can't go over time. So when I was like close enough for government work, understandably, they start booing. And then the other 1,995 people are like, you know what? Yeah, this guy's earned it. Boo! Boo! So I get booed by 2,000 people.
Oh,
Also, one of my idols and now mentors, I specifically invited him to be in that room because he's worked that circuit for decades already. And his name's Banachek. He's one of the smartest mentalists on the planet. He was in the back of the room. The silent partner of the agency that's representing me is in the back of the room. And this happens. So I'm like, thank you. Good night. See me at booth 372. And then walk off, right? And then
uh-huh.
the agent is like, I have some notes for you. Turns out 6 months later, I get booked to go entertain the troops in South Korea. The lady was in the room, saw me fail, had name recognition, but didn't remember why my name sounded familiar. It was just, oh yeah, Jonathan. Okay, yeah, he's familiar to me. And my agent's like, oh yeah, he's great. He's a hit, right? So then that's how I got my 3-week USO tour in South Korea and got to go to the DMZ and all over the beautiful country. And then that's
So
when I was like, I'm free from failure. This is awesome.
right, right, right. You failed forward because your name recognition was ultimately the important thing. So something that at least one major politician has learned. I guess he's learned over time. You remind me of a shockingly similar, embarrassing story, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So, very similarly, when I was a new cartoonist, I was invited to give a presentation to a room full of newspaper editors. Exactly your situation. It was 1,000 of my customers in one room, and if I nail this, man, I'm sitting sweet now because this was before anything had popped for me. I'd just started, and so I give my presentation, and newspaper people are hard to entertain. They're all crusty old cynical people, and like, yeah, yeah, we've seen this. Go ahead. So I don't get much response from the audience. That's the first thing that's bad. So I'd go into question mode, and a stately older gentleman stands up to ask his question. And I thought it was going to be a question. Turned out to be a statement. He said, "You know, Scott, you're the kind of your cartoons are what I call cartoonists' cartoons." He says, "What I mean by that is that you draw cartoons that only appeal to cartoonists." And then he sat down. And I thought to myself, "Who is this bastard? Who is he?" So as soon as I was done, I ran over to my editor and I said, "Do you know who that dick is?" I mean, that was a fucked I'm sorry.
Right.
That was a messed up thing to do. And she goes, "That's, Bill Keane, the creator of Family Circus, one of the biggest cartoons in the world." And I thought, "God, I hate that guy. I hate that guy." But then an interesting thing happened. I thought about it. And the more you think about it, the more it unfolds.
Ah,
It was, the cartoonists have this way of compressing a point because it's all you do. You simplify, you compress. And this damn thing unfolded every day for days. I just kept watching it grow. And it was like, here's what he told me. The most valuable advice I've ever gotten. Stop writing the comic for yourself. As soon as I changed the comic from the jokes that would appeal to me, which were kind of generic, an alien comes down to Earth, just things that don't really happen. And my customers were saying, we like it better when he's in the office doing things that are like what we do. Now, because I was trying to escape my day job to do something interesting, that is the only thing I didn't want to do. I had one
Last
thing I
thing you
didn't want to
wanted
do.
to shine, like put a magnifying lens on, was the nightmare you were living in.
Yeah, I didn't want to go to work and then write about work and go to work. So, but his unfolding advice was just playing like a record player, use an old term, in my head. And I started putting things together. I'm like, what if, taking from my business experience, I have an MBA. So rule number one, listen to the customer. What's rule number one of an artist? Don't listen to the customer. Hey, if the customer were an artist, they'd be making art for you.
Yep.
There's something special about me. That's why I'm an artist. So I'm going to make art for you. And damn it, you're going to like it because I know what you like. But the business person would say, no, I think that's backwards. Why don't you give them what they're asking for? And then the Bill Keane stuff was really the thing that unlocked everything. Because as soon
Yeah.
as I said, yeah, what if I write it for them? Boom. I started writing it for the audience and Dilbert became Dilbert. And it was that change and that cruelest of failure advice that made me wealthy.
Yeah.
Basically, it was a deep failure without which I'm not sure I could have unlocked the secret. And, in later years, I got to know Bill Key, and it turns out he was just one of the coolest, just best guys in the world.
Yeah.
And he also wasn't anything like his cartoon. If you looked at his cartoon, you'd say, the guy who writes this, I don't want to know him. Because he's got these sickeningly sweet ways of looking at the world.
So saccharine and
Yeah,
yeah.
I can see that there's an audience for it, but I'm not that audience. I don't wanna know that guy. Then you get to know him in person, nothing like the comic, because he followed his own advice. He did not draw a comic he wanted to read, and it made him rich. He shared with me that advice, but I took it as cruelty at the
Mhm.
time, but man, was it useful. So thank you, Bill
Oh,
Keane. He's late Bill Keane. I'll always appreciate that.
that is some powerful kung fu.
It is.
Just a single, not even a physical push, just one sentence, and it cracks your world. And I love your term, the unfolding. That to me is the perfect way of understanding something. That in
Yeah.
from the martial arts angle, it's about controlling your center and being aware of how your body structure is in alignment with reality. It's really all it is. The the situation can unfold in an infinite number of ways, but it's always an expression of how are you aligned with reality. That
Mm.
one little thing has an infinity inside of it that can just unfold its meaning in more and more contexts as you realize its applicability. And then,
Yeah, yeah. I'll give you a few other examples if you don't mind that are
yeah,
sort of that
it's
nature.
literally why you're here.
Okay. When I first submitted my sample cartoons to try to become a cartoonist, a syndicated cartoonist, I was rejected by all but one entity, United Media. So editor called me, and I didn't recognize the name United Media because I sent my samples to some other
Uh-huh.
entity, the parent company. And so, we're negotiating and stuff. And when she offered me the contract, I was very unconfident that my drawing was, professional class because it really wasn't. It wasn't even close. But it didn't stop me because, I don't mind failing. I'd failed lots of times. I was just going to try this. So when she offered me a contract over the phone, because she'd seen my samples, and I said, because another editor had said, maybe you could find an artist to work with you. to draw the cartoons for you because, your writing might be okay, but the art isn't there. So I said to her, well, thank you, but uh, do you think I should find an artist to do the art for me? And she goes, no, absolutely not. And I said, well, you can tell it's not really up to the level of professional class where it needs to be. And she said, yes, it is. I mean, I'm paraphrasing,
Right, right, right.
but I kept looking for a crack in her confidence, and there was none. She goes, no, don't change anything. The day she said that, I went back and, of course, I was drawing every day. The very next day I'm drawing, the quality of my art improved 75% just because she told me, just like the Wizard of Oz, the wizard tells you have a heart, you have a brain, you're brave, and then you are. You just needed an external source that you trusted. Now, the other thing is that she was arguably the number one person on the planet to be an expert in exactly that question.
Yeah.
Exactly that question. Is this cartoon going to work in a commercial way? And when the number one expert in the world tells you with no doubt whatsoever, yeah, this is okay. It just your brain just rewires. Like my talent changed. I mean, think about that. Your talent changed in a minute. 1 minute rewired my whole brain. And from that day on, I don't know if I paid more attention. I was a little more careful. I believed in myself. I tried harder. I don't know. I can't identify what I did differently, but I can look at the drawing I did the day before and the day after, and they don't even look like the same guy.
Yeah. I think a lot of that is the kind of in the same way of the belief and behavior as a self-fulfilling cycle.
Right.
To me, I've always thought of confidence as a function of competence. I am so good at this thing, I am confident in my ability to navigate this dynamic. And if somebody gives you that injection of confidence of saying, no, you're good enough, that confidence feeds back into your competence, which is a positive self-fulfilling cycle.
So just yesterday I did a video on the following point, about learning to get confidence for something you're not good at. How can you be confident at something you're not good at, but you need confidence to be better?
Mm.
So how do you kickstart that if you don't have the world expert on the whole planet
Yeah.
telling you you're good at? Like, how do you do it yourself without that external thing? And I gave the example of I've been trying to teach myself to play drums. Now, my self assessment of my ability is very low. That's partly what attracts me to it, right? Because I'm pushing myself, at a certain age, trying to keep my various parts of my brain working, and this is a good way to do it. So for over, I think, close to 2 years, I've been trying to get my hand speed as fast as anybody you see who's a professional drummer. And you see their hands move, and it's just a blur. And then I would try to do it, and it was like pop, 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 pop. And then I tried to do it as fast as I humanly could, but it was still pop, 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 pop. And then you would hear the professionals, and it would just be it's a
Right.
whole different thing. And I thought, okay, I have found the limit of my ability. My body, my hands, because my age, maybe I
Mhm.
just don't have the muscle structure that's the whippy right type for the thing. And one day I'm looking through some drum videos online and somebody explains how to hold the stick, a different explanation than I'd heard before. So I'd heard about hold it loosely and all these things. But when he talked about using the fingers to accelerate the stick, I thought, 2 years, I never heard that. And I thought, well, I wonder if I could do that because I'm fairly coordinated. So I'm like, oh, I'll try it. And I hit the drums a few times and I'm thinking, yeah, that does seem faster, but you have to practice it, right? It's a whole new technique. In about 10 minutes of practice, I hit speed. After 2 years of being certain that there were no signs that I could ever do this, I found it. Now, I gotta tell you that I battled my confidence the whole 2 years because I kept telling myself, "Okay, Scott, remember your experiences of your lifetime. You didn't think this was possible, you did it. You didn't think this was possible, you did it. How about other people? All these other people thought they couldn't do it, they did it. Didn't think they could run that far, they did. Didn't think they could lift this much, they did. Didn't think they could succeed, they did. All right, keep that in your mind. Keep that in your mind. This might be one of those. But the other part of me is saying, you don't have it. This is, stay in your lane. You went a little too far. You found your limit. It wasn't this, not your field. And I allowed I allowed my training, the part that I'd intentionally put in my brain, to take me far enough that I hit that accidental learning trigger is met, whole new level. And now once again, I have another story to add to my body of stories. Well, you remember that time you didn't think it was possible? Let me tell you how important this was. This technique.
Yeah.
And a lot of people know this story. I had a weird medical condition where I lost my ability to speak for 3.5 years. It's something called a spasmodic dysphonia. Now I could make noise, but it would sound like this. If I ordered a Diet Coke, it would sound like I like a Coke, so people couldn't really figure out what it was. And it's because your vocal cords would clench involuntarily. Now I looked into it, of course, researched what was the problem, and the answer was it's incurable. Incurable. So for the rest of my life, from from that point on, however many decades of life, I would never be able to have a conversation. And I had learned that you can't bond with people, even if they're nice to you, even if, you can communicate it. It just doesn't work. You need fluid conversation to bond with anybody. So I became kind of a ghost in the world. I survived. I mean, I was even married and had kids, but I was just in the room like a ghost. I wasn't interacting because I couldn't. And if I did, it was just, it was hard. Um, but that entire time, I had an affirmation, literally something I would repeat to myself, that I, Scott, will speak perfectly. Now, that was literally impossible. There was no cure for this. And then I found one. I searched the world and I found a doctor in Southern California who had an experimental surgery. Didn't even know why it worked because the part he was operating on wasn't even where the problem was. But he had this leap of intuition that rewiring some nerves in my neck, which were not the problem, by the way. It was something about my brain that was misfiring my vocal cords.
Right.
So without even touching my brain or my vocal cords, from some weird leap of intuition, he was like the top expert in this field. And he just said, I think this will work. He tried it, it worked. Have the surgery, I recover. It takes years to get your voice back after the surgery. So even though the equipment worked, you lose fluency if you don't speak for years.
Mhm.
So just forming the sentences as I'm doing now, you just couldn't do it. You have to relearn language, basically.
Huh.
So rem keep in mind how possible it would be to move from not being able to speak perfectly. Now, perfectly, of course, nobody is perfect, but something in that realm.
Yeah.
Yesterday, a music producer named Akira the Don dropped a song. There was a combination of my voice from my periscopes where I'm talking about, the user interface for reality, and he put a beat and a pleasant back music to it. Now, when I describe it, you say to yourself, well, I don't know if I'd want to listen to that, but he's a genius and he figured out how to make it really, really good. S- like I'd be surprised if this were not a commercial hit. It was actually amazingly, surprisingly good. And not because, of what I did. He just took random clips and put them together just brilliantly. But the point is that my voice is on a very high quality commercial product because of my voice. Now, it's also what I was saying, but now that's not a perfect voice. But if I told you that you were on a hit album with your voice, you'd say, well, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Right? So imagine how hard it was to keep my spirits up when I had an incurable permanent medical problem as far as other people were telling me. But I had enough of a lifetime of experience that not once did I believe it was true. Not once.
Yeah. And it
So
really
and that
it's the
keeps
power of the
that
mind,
kind
man.
yeah, and that keeps you alive, when you've
Yeah.
got these. Just knowing that these seemingly unsolvable problems get solved fairly often, fairly
Yep.
often.
Yep. And one thing is accepting the power of your own convictions and the ability to, over time, reinforce them without having them worn down or away by external forces. Right? And then just have the
Yeah,
wherewithal to devote your energy to making it happen.
and it really helps to understand the mind as programmable, and that the programming technique is repetition, simplicity, visualization, the dozen other things. But if you think of it that way as a machine, then you could say, "Hey, this would be really helpful to me later to program in these memories, call them up once in a while to reinforce them, dig a nice groove in my brain,
Hmm.
get a nice little channel there that's not gonna go away over time, and just move that into my programming, library, I guess."
Yeah. And that's kind of technology has usually been the go-to context to explain how we think. It's like a telegram, it sends a message down the neurons, right? Oh,
Right.
it's like a projector. You've got your mind at the front of your mind, right? So nowadays, computer science and programming makes even more sense, right? So it's kind of like understanding persuasion and the programmability of your mind and the way that you think is kind of like unlocking root admin access to the source code that enables you to create programs that will do whatever it is you need them to do. And now you're walking around with most folks who barely know how to turn their computer on. And the limits that they're hitting of user access and being frustrated with the way this computer works. Like, well, you could become an admin. You could totally hack your system, but if you don't want to, you're not gonna. So it's there.
Yeah, and there's 2 parts to that. One is understanding that you are programmable, and then the freaky part, and I talk about this all the time because it's something you have to hear a million times, is that you can instantly program other people, and you are whether you're trying or not. So you can't turn it off. You only have a choice of doing it well or doing it randomly because you're not trying to do it whatsoever. And people don't realize that. And I hate to say it, but the police brutality, I want to tell people how much they have control over those situations, but the nature of the topic is just too emotional. Nobody wants to think it's anybody's fault except the evil police, so we're not ready. But certainly lots of reasonable people, both black and white. I mean, this is not some kind of like white opinion. Lots of people understand, and usually it's high operating people. Like you'll see somebody like Chris Rock, who honestly is just working at a higher level of awareness from other people. That's what makes him successful. He can rise above the noise and just say, "Yeah, if you do these things, the police are gonna kick your ass. If you do these other things, they're also gonna kick your ass. Here's a list of all the ways to get your ass kicked by the police." Now he does it in joke form because that's what he does, but it's also a higher level of awareness. You do cause these actions. You make him do what he does. Now, it's one thing to say, okay, in special cases, I can see that cooperating would be better than not cooperating. That's just sort of an obvious one, even though people treat it like it's not obvious. Um, but once you extend that to every interaction with everybody all the time, and you say to yourself, all right, if I feel like complaining, because I really do, I feel like complaining, what's that going to do to the person I'm complaining to? Until that's on the top of your head, as opposed to maybe something you thought about later, you're not fun to be with.
Nope.
It if you wanna live a life where, you have good relationships and people wanna invite you places and marry you and have sex with you and all those things you want that make your life worthwhile, you gotta remember that your negativity is programming those other people instantly, and if that's what you're if you do that, that's what's gonna come back.
One of my mentors put it, be a faucet, not a drain.
Ah.
Like, yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
That is perfect. And that really is one of those terrifying dawning realization moments when you understand the role you've played in programming your experience. In one way,
Right.
it's phenomenally empowering and it sets you free because you can now consciously decide which direction to take it. And then you look back at decades and decades where you were floundering around and just thrashing in the darkness. No wonder you've hurt yourself and the people you love. And you're like, oh my God, I had such a huge part, a much bigger part in this than I ever possibly could
Yeah.
understand. It's just, okay, you did the best with what you could at the time you had. You know better now, do better now and later. That's the only way to atone for the sins of your ignorance.
Years ago, one of the most useful insults I ever received, besides the one from Bill Keane, was a woman who was a good friend and for years. And I think alcohol was involved. And she told me one day that like I had too much negativity. I was just too much of a downer. Now I was completely surprised by this. Usually you have some idea about how you're coming across to other people, but here's what I thought completely wrong. I was entertaining. That when I was complaining about things, I was doing it in an entertaining way, and I was like, "Oh, this is just part of my being a fun person to be with. Oh, this went wrong, this went wrong. I stepped in some, dog crap. Ha ha ha." And but I didn't realize that it also is a nonstop level of problems and complaints that I'm filling somebody's head with. And even if they're laughing at the same time, they don't need that. And it wears them down over time. Now, finding somebody who is both drunk enough and aware enough to tell you that to your face is like a gift.
Dear friend.
Yeah, that's a gift. And I really tried after the day, and I had another friend who was the perfect model for this. He had told me once that he had also discovered he was being a little too negative and decided to change that. And his method was that he would always try to find a positive thing to say. If he had to say something negative, he'd try to soften it with a positive. It's like, "Oh, this thing isn't working, but man, it's well designed," you know? And I noticed over years that I'd known him, I thought to myself, "Damn it, he does do that." And it does work. He was like my favorite friend. Like, of all the people I could spend time with, he was number 1. And I thought, "You fricking programmed me."
Yeah.
He gave me a positive experience every time I was with him. He held back all of the negative, and I didn't really notice he was doing it. All I
Mhm.
noticed was I enjoyed being with him. I didn't really analyze it in any deep way, but as soon as he told me that, then I could see it. Like
Right.
you could just see it everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'd watch him do it with other people, and he was like, "Oh, it's too bad, but at least there's plenty of it." Like, wow. And then I just started modeling that, and it programs yourself in a very productive way. At the same time, it programs other people in a way that they enjoy.
Really
So it's
does. Yeah.
morally and ethically, it's just a good habit.
I had exactly the same experience, which was I thought being sarcastic and putting other people down was the only thing you could do with your best friends. So this was an expression of how good of friends we are. You old ugly son of a bitch. You little piece of shit. Why you too dumb to even work the knob? Like that kind of thing, right? Which I
Yeah.
thought was convivial. Yeah, this is in group. Let's build some camaraderie. Then I realized if I just pretend to be a jerk all day, every day, it's reasonable for other people to believe that I'm a jerk all day, every day. And then I intentionally said, nope, no more. Sarcasm is going to be right out of my toolkit. I'm going to be one of those disgusting, earnest people that actually tells people how much they appreciate them. And my world got so much better. And and it plays out on stage too. Because in the world of magic and mentalism, there's a problem called hecklers, which is somebody in the audience who's smarter than the magician and their mission is to prove it, right? Like, it's
Uh,
the wire. He's holding it with his hand. Like all just the negative experience heckling that could
uh,
happen. I don't get hecklers. I just don't get hecklers anymore. And it's because my whole mission of when I'm on stage doing what it is that I do is to help people think beyond the limits of what they think is real. Like that's it. That's the whole goal. my strategy for that is to come out on stage, accept the mantle of, yes, I can do these things that you can't. Look, there, I did the dog and pony show. You know I can do these things that you think I can. There, I just fulfilled your expectations. Now that we got that out of the way, let's do some really cool stuff where you're going to do some weird stuff. And now it's all about me being a facilitator for these impossible experiences that my volunteers are doing. So now it's a celebration of their ability and their imagination in doing things that 2 minutes ago they said they couldn't do.
Right.
Who in the right mind in the audience is going to be like, he's helping somebody succeed. He's helping them discover the power of their imagination and to think beyond the limits of what they think is possible. Right? Like that just doesn't happen.
Worst heckler ever.
Yeah. And on the programming side of that, the other performers come to me going, you don't get hecklers. And I've seen you perform over the years, and this isn't just a fluke. What are you doing? Right? Because talk about influence, getting a stranger to come on stage with a professional mind reader, that is an uncomfortable dynamic.
Right.
And then being able to communicate instructions to them in a way that they'll understand to do the right thing to reach a successful conclusion, that's impossible. I do it every day, that kind of thing, right?
Right.
One of the biggest parts of it is to demonstrate and embody the behavior and the excitement level that you want the spectator on stage to show. So
Right.
as they're coming up on stage and I'm shaking their hand and the audience is clapping and nobody can hear it, I just look them right in the eye and go, you're going to do great. You're going to have fun.
It
And now
matters.
somebody tells them that they're a person who is going to have fun. Everything that we're about to do is going to be fun. So you're telling them how to experience this thing that unfolds on stage, which could be super embarrassing. You made me look stupid because I don't know what these words mean. But instead, they're taking it as, this is incredible. How much fun, right? And I used to think that I needed to be the blank slate and overtly neutral to give empty space for the experience of the volunteer so that they had an unprompted, honest reaction. Make it more authentic, that kind of thing.
Uh,
But life-changing amazement doesn't look entertaining. It is a deeply internal, oh my God, wait, what? Which isn't good showbiz.
right.
So I realized, I was like, okay, I have to model the behavior. So when something amazing happens, I have to be amazed. I have to demonstrate. Now they know what the proper behavior pattern is. They do what I'm doing as the most contextually relevant, ideal thing to do. And now they're doing the right thing. It's all programmed. It's all scripted. It's all
Yep.
built and engineered. And that's why, going way back to the beginning of our conversation, it's when people think that influence is holding up three fingers and making somebody think three. That is such a surface level. It's that when somebody sees my show for the second time and then realizes everything I thought was off the cuff and in the moment and spontaneous exactly happened exactly the same way with a totally different person. I'm like,
Right.
yeah, this stuff works off systems that are pre-cultural. That's why when the tiger shows up at Roy and at like the Vegas shows, I don't care where you grew up, that's amazing.
Right.
So it's not cultural relevance. This is fundamental human systems programming. And once you're aware of it, it really does unlock a whole world of possibility that most folks can't even peek into.
Yeah, you reminded me when the story about telling somebody it's going to be fun. People don't realize that words carry a little programming with them, and you're thinking, well, the person is going to say, in my opinion, it's not going to be fun. So how can a word penetrate that? It's just a word, but actually, the words are like little bullets. They carry a little weight with them, and if you get the right word, it's even heavier.
Hmm?
And the example that I thought of is when I took the Dale Carnegie course. They do an exercise that will just live with me forever. I mean, just one of the most mind-bending things I'd ever seen. And they said, "We're gonna teach you how to give compliments, but also how to receive them." And the process was everybody in the class, it might have been 25 of us, have to write down a compliment for each person in the class. Now, we didn't really know each other because we were just classmates. And we only knew them from their speeches and maybe a little small talk in the highway. So, of course, somebody said, we basically don't know these other people. How are we going to come up with a compliment that doesn't sound just completely arbitrary? And here's the brilliant part. The instructor said, "Watch this." He goes, "You will, and then I'm gonna put them all together, and each of you will receive an envelope of everybody in the class's compliments that were your compliments. So you'll get to see 25 compliments. And watch what happens when you read these completely artificial BS compliments that you knew were just because the teacher told them they had to do it. They don't know you." I don't know, it's like a month later, you get your little envelope, and you're like, I'm not even sure I want to read these surfacey, meaningless compliments. You take it out, and the first one will be like, "You're well dressed," and I'll think, "Oh, it's kind of true. I'm glad you noticed that. All right, thank you." You seem confident, huh? I- I'm kind of happy somebody noticed that. and you read 25 compliments that are totally surfacey. People don't even know you, and even knowing that, they work exactly like a sincere compliment, which was the lesson.
Hmm.
And the big learning, at least the thing I took from it, was that if you have a compliment in your mind and it can be delivered, sometimes you hold back because you think it won't sound sincere.
It would be cheesy.
Yeah, it'd be cheesy. It just sounds like I'm expected to say it or I'm just being nice or something.
Right.
And my current view is that withholding any compliment that ever comes into your head, if you can deliver it, it approaches immoral to hold on to it because it's basically free and there's 100% chance it will have a good impact. Nobody dislikes a compliment. They like insincere compliments. They like sincere ones. They like it from strangers. They like it from friends. Once you learn, no exception. And if you found somebody who didn't like a compliment, there's probably some mental illness going on or some other problem, right?
Yeah.
No. And let me give you a perfect story. I think Christina would allow me to tell this story. Um, we were talking about how often I tell her she's beautiful because even though she's objectively, clearly, you know, just over 4 million Instagram followers, the world has decided, right? There's no longer a question. She's world class beautiful. And so I thought, well, how many times do I have to tell you that, right?
Like once is enough because it's so obvious.
Once a month, once a month, is that good? And of course, I've learned that, a few times a day would be about the right amount. But then she said, it would really be even better than the word beautiful, although I love that word. That's great, is the word stunning. Because she told me some story about somebody else who got called stunning, and it was just like a really more impactful word. I was like, really? So we had a conversation about whether stunning or beautiful is right. And I think it was within 24 hours I called her stunning, and she simply just took it as a compliment. I mean, she literally told me, say this word. It was that. Now, you could easily argue, was that just shallow? I was just giving her the word she wanted. But it's also true. I mean, she is objectively, literally, stunningly beautiful. And the fact that that worked is just it's just mind-blowing. And you
Yeah.
realize the power of compliments and how you can change somebody's whole day, their life with a
Right.
few words.
If people will give you their operating manual and be like, here, push these buttons in these ways and the machine works. You're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, you just have to believe it. It's like the version of the is it Maya Angelou says, when people tell you who they are, believe it. But,
Hmm.
the version of that is when they tell you what works for them, it does. It
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
Just do that.
I had to work through a lot of that from the performing angle because early on I thought, they're just clapping because they're the audience and I just did the ta-da moment. So they're just being nice. I can't actually trust them that I'm doing a good job. And then it eventually morphed into realizing I had to be comfortable with the awareness and adulation of a room full of 1,000 people. And it is my job to make them comfortable with their giving me a compliment. And seeing performers argue with love is one of the weirdest things to witness. You got the autograph line, you're signing posters, and everybody goes, I loved your show. It was amazing. They're like, yeah, but you should have seen me yesterday when it was even better. Like,
Yeah.
what a dick move, right? Like, learn how to take a compliment and not argue with somebody's taste because you're telling them, listen, I know you think I'm great, but you're too stupid to understand why I'm awful. So, okay, dummy,
That's right.
with your dumb take on why I'm great.
Right.
And now you made them feel bad for liking you.
Yeah.
And it's the same way with somebody coming up and being like, oh man, do you know Chris Angel? He's great. Right? I could take that as, "Oh, yeah, but do you know about Chris Angel?" Right? Like, "Yeah, I worked with him on a national TV project. I was brought in, put up at the Luxor for a week, and it was awesome. Like, I love that man. He works hard, and he's incredible." Right? So even if it's somebody I didn't like, you just go, "Oh, they're great," because they just saw you, and they think you're the bee's knees. If you bring down who it is that they're using to compare you to, you're bringing yourself down too.
Right.
If you build up everybody and they think you're even better than that, you're just helping yourself and you're not making them feel like a jerk or liking something.
Yeah. So it's the best advice you'll ever get on how to accept a compliment, because I hear people say that. How do I accept a compliment? Because I'm uncomfortable. There's only one way. It works every time. It will never not work. It will never be wrong. And it goes like this. Thank you. That's it. Like the hypnotist trick, add nothing. Thank you is done and perfect. Everything you add to that detracts from the moment. Everything.
Really does. Really does. Yeah. So we've been at this for a while and covered a lot of territory and some cool stuff that I rarely get to dig into. So I definitely appreciate getting to talk about it. So as we're on the back end of this, what's on the horizon for you? Because you've written a couple awesome books. Like I've got them, right? There'd be links to it, all that good showy stuff, right?
Right.
So part of your mind, where are you putting it?
Well, first of all, for your audience, if they're interested in this stuff, my book Win Bigly, the one before Loser Think, is the one specifically about persuasion. So if you wanted an easy way into the world of persuasion without you know, the scientific stuff
The
that you don't
stuffy
know.
terms and pin it to death. Yeah.
Yes, that would be the one. Right now, I moved a lot of my content over to the Locals platform. It's a new social media platform, and it's a subscription, so I can't get kicked off, and there's no algorithm that will own me. So
Outstanding.
I found freedom where I can do pretty much anything I want, and I'm not getting canceled by anybody. So that's my big move. I think the world of advertising may be dying because people are realizing it doesn't work the way, at least in the classic sense, it works in some special cases. So I think advertising, maybe people will realize it doesn't work so well, but also it's just too interruptive to the entertainment.
Right.
You know, I would pay a lot not to see a commercial, and people are.
Yeah.
So
Great point.
that's the world. The world is subscription. I think that's where it's going.
Yeah, that kind of surveillance capitalism of like, I'm all for free trade. I'm all for voluntary exchange of value. That is the only way that the world gets better. Like, full stop.
All right.
Having said that, having this 24/7 panopticon, getting to mete out my message to the algorithm defined audience and then slide in their messaging as subversive advertising and just like, no thank you. Like we've been through that, no longer something that we're willing to put up with. So I love that
Let,
platforms like that are coming where
let,
be you, man.
let me let me leave you and the audience with this provocative thought. Artificial intelligence, you could be sure, will learn to persuade even more than it already is. In other words, it will learn what's the exact message somebody like you specifically are likely to retweet or click, and it'll figure, oh, let's feed that person some more. And over time, it will just be able to rapidly test what influences somebody to click or buy or vote. When that reaches that point, as good as you are at influencing, as good as I am, as good as the amazing Randy is, we will be a fraction as good as AI will become. And when AI becomes fully persuasive, we will have nothing that even pretends to be free will, and we'll have no idea why our opinions are what they are or where they came from. Now, first of all, point one, would you agree that it's inevitable that that's where that's going to end up?
I would disagree that it's inevitable, however, very probable.
Okay, that's point one. Now, here's the provocative part. How would you know it didn't already happen? What would it look like? Would it look like protests and riots on the street, but if he asked people exactly what they wanted, the answers would be all different? Because that's your tell for cognitive dissonance and people not having a reason for what they do. What it would look like is massive energy that doesn't seem to have a specific cause you can identify or a specific demand. We're having national protests over agreement. Agreement. There's nobody on the other side. Well, have you ever seen protests over agreement? On day one, the president said, yeah, this is a problem. Give me some ideas. They gave him some ideas. He signed an executive order. Nobody was on the other side. I would just like to suggest that if you are looking for a tell for when AI has already taken over, it would look exactly like this. It doesn't mean it is this, right? Because confirmation bias, there are lots of ways you could be wrong. But if it happens, it will look exactly like this week. That's your provocative thought.
I love that. It's, again, beautiful and terrifying, which I think is a good place to end. There you have it. I told you that was a fascinating conversation, went a lot of places, and since the 2 years ago, since we had this conversation, a lot more has happened. So it's kind of interesting for me to listen back on that conversation to see the world is a lot different now. Anyway, let me know what you thought. Have thoughts, feelings, questions, comments, concerns? Send them my way. Find me on Facebook, Twitter, the website, anywhere. I'm everywhere, easy to get a hold of. If you'd like to stay in touch with the newest developments, what's going on with the show, you could subscribe on whatever your favorite podcatcher is, or you could send me an email at hello@icanreadminds.com. Yes, that really is my email. So that's it for this episode. Looking forward to seeing you in future ones.
If you'd like to join the community, head over to symbolsandsecrets.com/secret. That's where you can join our private members area where you can get direct access to Jonathan, early episodes, ask questions of future guests, and more. Your support means everything, so tell your friends about the show if you enjoyed it. If you didn't like the show, tell your enemies about it instead. Either way, we appreciate you listening. This has been Symbols and Secrets.